it's Ash from SuperVideos back for another video for the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon spinoff. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the possibility of a Carol and Daryl flashback at the end of season 1 of the Daryl Dixon spinoff, which actually sets up the second season. And I'll explain what I mean by that, but this also may explain how Carol ends up in France in season 2, which has been confirmed. So stay tuned, we'll be right back to break this down. Alright, as always, before we dive into it, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. With that said, let's dive right into it. So of course we do know that Daryl Dixon finds himself in France in season 1 of the Daryl Dixon spinoff. And a lot of people have been asking, how does that happen? And a lot of people have had a lot of theories about that. We're not here to break that down necessarily. I've done some videos on that already anyway. But what we're here to talk about is Carol. We know that Carol is in France with Daryl. We've seen some behind the scenes pictures of the two of them together. And this is particularly filming that they've been doing for season 2. Now, the question comes up, how does Carol make it to France? I mean, the Daryl one is already weird. How does Carol get there? The only way where that makes sense is if Carol and Daryl were both in France at the start. Now, you may be asking, then, how come Carol is not in season 1? Well, the real reason why is because the actress Melissa McBride couldn't relocate to France to film season 1, but she was able to do that for season 2. So with that said, story-wise, how could that make sense? How could they make that be realistic and make it work? The only way where that happens, like I said, is if the two of them were already in France and they got separated at the beginning. We just didn't see it. So what I mean by that is Carol and Daryl were on some sort of mission together, which led to the two of them splitting up or separating. And this would be obviously near Europe. Maybe not near France specifically, but near Europe. And when we start season 1, we started with Daryl. And even though they might not mention that Carol is around, she is probably also around the area. Now, one thing that does come up is, why doesn't Daryl look for Carol? So that's definitely a very valid point to bring up. But maybe they just didn't show it in the teasers and trailers. Maybe that is a part of what Daryl is doing. Now, how does this relate to the flashback? Well, since Melissa McBride was able to come back for season 2, maybe they could squeeze in a flashback to the end of season 1 of the Daryl Dixon spinoff, a post-credit scene flashback. Now you may ask, what would that be? That would be to close the gap. That flashback would be to show us that Carol and Daryl were together and they got separated before we saw Daryl at the beginning of the season. Now, that would obviously close the gap and explain where Carol was, how she ended up in France and all of that. So they don't necessarily need to do a lot more to explain that in season 2. That is, though, if they explain how Daryl gets to France properly. And they make sure that it's realistic, because every theory out there is a little far off as far as being realistic. Now, the other thing that we need to be thinking about is, did they even know Melissa McBride is going to come back in season 2? Because if they didn't, then they couldn't have made any mention of Carol being around or anything like that, because then they would be pushing themselves in a corner where they can't really do much if Melissa McBride couldn't come in for season 2. And if they couldn't really mention anything or confirm that Carol is around or anything, then it makes it almost impossible for them to be able to explain it with a flashback in a realistic manner. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of moving pieces to it. There's a lot of things that need to line up for this to work. But generally speaking, I think if there was at least some level of agreement or alignment on Melissa McBride being able to join season 2, then this could very well work in the story. And it could definitely add some layers to the story that we might not see coming right now, if we haven't really thought of this. With that said, I'm definitely intrigued to know your thoughts and opinions, so share that in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this, smash the like button, subscribe to join our community, and press the bell to be notified when I upload on the channel. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.